for it to kind of go on air. All right, there it is. So welcome to the first Professional Games Master Society Hangout. It's me, Mark Abrams, and Lake Watson. And
Watkins.
Watkins. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Lake Watkins. And this is just a very informal hangout. We're just getting together to chat. I've invited a number of members, and as people come in, we'll introduce them.
Okay.
So, what I'd like.
Well, thanks for having me. In any case,
you're welcome. And what I'd like to do is just kind of introduce you and ask you, where are you at in terms of games mastering, and kind of what are your goals, and how are things going?
Okay. Well, I'm physically located in Hong Kong right now, and been traveling the world for a few years, pursuing my passion, which is all about gaming, and but many different aspects of gaming. I've kind of come back around to the game mastering side of it, and as I've been doing that, I've been starting meetups or entire communities here in Hong Kong and other cities, and had a couple hundred players over that period. Now I've started moving into online, and I've got 3 groups that I'm running on a semi-pro basis. It's working out pretty well so far, but it's just the start. I'd like to try to build that on the local and the online communities as much as I can to really build something that I can be proud of and that will be really entertaining for years to come. So I've been game mastering for about 20 years, since before I knew what D&D or any other system was, and I've just allowed a natural outgrowth of the same game of make-believe that we all really enjoy, and trying to make that something awesome. So.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it definitely what you're doing sounds completely awesome. I mean, I'm all in envy mode at the moment.
Mm.
So you're traveling the world, you're setting up games, you're in Hong Kong right now, and I guess the question that I would have for you is, how are you approaching, setting up what I think you described as semi-pro games, but what's your method for getting people, involved, and how are you,
Right. Well, right now I'm advertising through Roll20 and on Reddit in the looking for group forums there. I had experimented with a few other places without success, so those are the 2 places I've had the most success for recruiting new players. Having traveled a lot and played with a lot of people, I had a player base I could pull from of existing players as well. So some of them are playing now in this online games. But it helps to be in a time zone which is exactly the opposite of everyone else, because I can work a 9-to-5 workday while everyone else is coming home after they're in the evenings and playing, or starting in the morning.
Right.
And I've got players in Europe as well, and so it makes me a bit more flexible, since I can play like late night hours for nurses or EMTs, or I can do hours that are fitting for European players. And so that's just a nice lucky benefit that's worked out for me as I've been looking into this. And yeah, it's right now I'm running it all through Roll20, but I've been looking at a lot of other options. I'm sure that you guys have looked at other virtual tabletop solutions, and yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So I take it you're not in you're in Hong Kong, but it's not necessarily because of that reason.
No.
Oh.
I originally came to Hong Kong actually to pursue an artificial intelligence initiative that was here. And I was working as a researcher for a few years, and I still think that there's a lot of potential with that project, but when they started moving towards robotics away from games, I decided to leave and to continue to focus on gaming.
I see. And were you able to bring any of the, research that you did into your kind of world of gaming?
Not yet. it's just not quite there. I think that it will be in the next 5 years, but if it were a little bit closer, I think I would have stuck with it to just try to get it to work. But the dream would be to have a virtual tabletop solution where you have, an AI game master that could take over for you at any time to fill in the blanks or help you with certain parts of your preparation or other details. Because once you have that sort of level of general intelligence where it can understand dialogue, what people are saying, what that means in the context of the game world or other things, I feel like that just makes so many things easier. And that's one of the only ways that you can really get to scale, right? Because when you have to physically do it all yourself without any automation, it's an incredible amount of work.
Yeah.
But even with just a little bit of automation, I think it's pretty excellent. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working on a project now that's for games masters to handle basically game prep. And
Right.
so it's a utility that lets you build a world and then configure it according to how you want. So if you want certain kinds of weapons, you can create them. If you want certain kinds of skills, you can create them. And it lets games masters share materials between each other if they want. So you can make your stuff public in your world, and then other games masters will have visibility to it if they go look, hey, what's available? And they can kind of scroll through the different kinds of things and pull it in. So that's kind of a world building aspect, and then it lets you, generate characters and lets your players log in and generate characters for themselves. What it's not doing is any of the, direct in-game play stuff like Roll20. I'm not doing any mapping. I'm not doing any, piece movement and stuff like that. Although actually, I do have code for that I created back in between 96 and 2000. So I actually have code that does all of that. But I haven't ported it out of that old language, into the web interface. So I'm still sort of, hanging on to that. And I don't know if I really want to kind of compete with Roll20. They've already sort of grabbed that space. And, I have a lot of other work to do with what I'm already developing now. So I don't feel like I really necessarily need to do that. And I don't really want to, sort of impinge on what Roll20 is trying to do. Necessarily. I'm just like, well, they've got their space, they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing. But one of the thoughts I had was configuring this so that it would handle a certain amount of AI stuff, but it would be related to game prep rather than actual gameplay. So when I've been making decisions like, hey, where do the other groups move? It might make decisions based on, let's say, combination of personalities and sort of help to sort of outlay what, motives, like setting up like a system for motivation, random wandering things, personalities, alignments, and doing a flux of those things that then could help to sort of automate the process of backstory generation based on your own configuration. So it's like, so I'm going to set up the mayor. The mayor has a motive of running the town and controlling everybody, let's say, etc. So that, that's sort of in the back of my head. Do you think that that's something that might, I don't know, be possible?
Yeah, it could be possible. I'm a little bit skeptical of narrow AI solutions, just coming from, my experience with sort of the state of the art as I've seen it. I feel like there's so much potential to do so much more than that I would rather just wait until that's, really ready. But, it could be a long time. And in the meantime, I have to do prep and I have to make things work. So, I mean, it would be something I would need to look at and consider carefully. Right now, I mean, I'm also from a computer science background, and so it's easier for me to deal with scripts or deal with the actually setting up the wiki and other things that I do than it is for me to do art. So, for example, I find that a lot of my prep time right now is going into art, just setting up the scenes properly, getting the characters' portraits done, that sort of thing. There's a lot that's involved. I looked at some other solutions besides Roll20, like Fantasy Grounds and like even Tabletop Simulator that some people are using. And those seem like they're okay. But I agree that prep is the largest time sink right now, and that's the major thing that needs to be shortened because, in the past I was able to run games with very little prep because expectations weren't quite so high. But given the nature of professional game mastering, I think that it is necessary to put in that extra time to really deliver.
Right.
And,
yeah. So
that's
I totally agree with you. And the more, there's two factors. One is a volume factor, and the other is a quality factor, and you need both to be able to up. So the idea that I had for this application is, at least for me, the way that I intend to use it is to just augment my ability to do high quality prep, at volumes that is, sustainable for larger groups of people.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that is it's sort of the missing link right now in the world of, online RPG tools. There's stuff out there, this Obsidian Portal, and, Roll20 does, it has to, and Fantasy Grounds has stuff that lets you build campaigns in it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
Yeah. And I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say that I don't feel that those systems are really kind of tightly integrated. So it sort of relies on the user to build their own stuff. And what it does is, I think, those systems, the sort of flaw or fly in the ointment is if you're not really an IT person originally and you don't know about coding, you're going to hit Roll20, you're going to look at the macro system, and you're probably going to be kind of daunted, by it. And I think that, that's kind of like an issue. Not for me. I don't have a problem with it, but I just imagine that other people who aren't really, programmer types might look at it and say, that's too complicated. So it was another objective of mine was to simplify that whole process and make it as easy as possible by not having a huge amount of variation in terms of systems and whatever. And just, there's no macro language involved. It's just you build your stuff, but it's all point and click. You say, hey, I want this armor to be plus, plus armor class modifier this, minus, dexterity that, blah, blah, blah. So it makes it relatively easy to sort of build your stuff. And it's still highly configurable. So my thinking is, as we go forward, these kinds of tools are going to become more prevalent. And as they become more prevalent, it's going to allow games masters the ability to, sort of up the ante and therefore be able to charge, reasonable prices, because we were going to look at it and say, wow, this guy's handling stuff in a great way. I mean, the world is complex, it's rich, there's tons of new things in here, it's all his, it's unique. I'm not playing some module that I could sneak over to Barnes & Noble and buy, and I know what's going on, and that sort of stuff. So I think that's kind of, part of where things are going to be going in the future.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I wonder what exactly the business need is going to be that is going to be best addressed by these tools. Because, well, when I think about it, like, I used Obsidian Portal. I tried a lot of these things, and I just settled on using the most flexible open source wiki software I could find, and just, modifying that basically until it did what I wanted. And, the way I handle it now, I pretty much use Roll20 exclusively for its gameplay functionality, and then I use the wiki software for managing all the world building, basically everything that I would use handouts for in Roll20 and so forth. But even still, like, I find that I'm putting a lot of prep time in places I didn't expect. Things like the art or like just writing, just takes a while. And, some of it too is that would help is, access to the community, being able to like talk to you guys or get feedback on certain design choices. I try to stay as player focused as I possibly can to try to really figure out how I can engage them and address what they want to find that's awesome in the game. But So I spend an awful lot of time trying to talk directly to my players or like just communicate with them. So even if I had like better communication tools than just being on a bunch of random different, communication apps like Skype or whatnot.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
Or something like if there was a tool that directly connected the ads that I put out that allowed me to communicate with people that were expressing interest. So then that way I don't have to jump between the places where I'm posting the ads and the places where I talk to the players to bring them into the game.
Right. So are you talking about things like you're posting ads to like Google Plus and Twitter and stuff like that?
Kind of, yeah. Right now, as I said, Reddit and the Roll20 boards are actually the place where I've had the most success. So I might jump into Reddit and just see if there's any messages or any players that are interested. If there are, then I try to get their contact info so that I can talk to them on Skype, and then I hold an interview on Skype, see if they'd be a good fit for their games, maybe prepare them for what they're about to experience. And but then, that just takes a while to get all that set up. And it would be, I could imagine a tool, for example, that would address that specific need, just being able to connect you directly to the user that you want. I'm sure ad platforms have solved this in other industries or for other types of games, but as you say, this is pretty novel. There's no real solution for this for game mastering. So.
Right, yeah, not at this point, but I mean, it makes me think that these are the kinds of things that maybe we could organize the Professional Games Master Society, to sort of focus on some of these things. Like one of the thoughts I had was maybe we could kind of organize some sort of like cat herding, service where we sort of help each other with, let's say I'm in the middle of a complicated storyline and I've befuddled myself, quite frankly. I don't know what happened, but I have all these cool things that are going on, and I just need somebody to help me, a couple of people. Let's sit down. We each have our thing, and maybe I explain mine. I get some feedback. I'm like, oh, great idea, blah, blah, blah. And we do the same for you, and it's just kind of like a brainstorming session for games masters,
right?
Just to help us to sort of rifle through where our campaigns are going and get ideas and shoot ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
No,
I think that could be incredibly useful.
I know.
For me,
I'd love to have that. Frankly.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's hard to find people to talk to about this stuff.
Right.
Like this.
Exactly, and I can't just go online and post to like Google Plus because my players are there and they see everything I post.
Yeah.
I need something on the side, just games masters, because obviously I can't put my spoilers out there and be like, hey, what do you guys think about this storyline?
Yeah. Change the names, change the genders, still not enough.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is maybe setting up like some sort of bi-weekly hangout for specific, discrete games master, like things like that. So it could be like, game story, I don't know what to call it. Cat herding.
Right.
Cat herding sessions.
Yeah, or just, just feedback. Any feedback is good, I think.
Right, exactly. So if I was going to set up some of these, and I think they should be discrete. I think it should be like, I'm not sure about this. I mean, you tell me what you think, but my thinking is make a set of these, maybe 2 or 3 or whatever, that are kind of like focused on a particular area that we need help with. And that way people will know, okay, yeah, I really need help with story stuff. I'm going to go to those. But when it comes to game prep and art stuff, I don't really need help with that necessarily, but this guy does and she does and he does and so on. So they can combine forces over here on this, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a set of collaboration, events. And they're just, they're on an ongoing basis maybe. And I guess the question would be how to kick it off in a way so that enough people participate so that it becomes a thing and it's, and it becomes useful. So that would be...
Well, I don't mind helping to kick that off. I'm not sure how long I can commit. Right now, when I started this as semi-pro game mastering, it was just meant to sort of hold me over between contracts, which is one reason I didn't jump into full professional game mastering. But I suspect that I'll be in and out of the business. So when I'm here, I could talk to you guys, and when I'm not, hopefully we gain enough momentum that it keeps going without me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. I mean, it's certainly, I think, has a lot of potential in terms of being useful. But with a lot of things like this, I find, the online community is kind of hit and miss. Sometimes things really take off, and sometimes they, just don't. I haven't really figured out why some things do and some things don't. Maybe it's just a matter of timing, or, just the mode of launching, or, how things go in the first two meetings or whatever. But yeah, so what I think I'm going to do is I'll just, put out the word in the Professional Games Master Society, let people know that it's available as a service. Maybe the thing to do is kind of link it to something like Doodle and let people sort of chime in on time frames that are good for them or something like that. In other words, sort of like self-activating, in some way, like set your schedule.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's things like WhatsApp or whatever else that you could use too, or WeChat or something.
Right.
But yeah.
There's
a. Excuse me. Sorry.
I was thinking, I mean, along the lines of the Professional Games Master Society could be kind of facilitating a set of services that would help games masters to, sort of augment their capabilities. I mean, we're all weak in some areas, but I know among the membership, we're covered in terms of all kinds of skill sets that if we combine forces, we could really help each other. I mean, we've got audio editing people, we've got video editing people, we've got artists, we've got games masters who know every system in the book, we've got, and I just imagine that we should be able to sort of create a framework of mutual collaboration if it's, kind of organized in a way that's relatively efficient. And so that's kind of where I'm sort of trying to visualize how that would work, what that would look like, what kind of features would be necessary. So just as a point to anybody who might watch this later as well, if you have ideas about this and you want to contribute them, just, you can write into the Professional Games Master Society. We're on Google+, and, pop in with ideas anytime. And I'm certainly open to any thoughts that people have about it. So, but what do you think, like?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good idea. It's, I think it would be really great if we could get some collaboration going between multiple game masters. When I set up this foundation originally for a different purpose, but I co-opted it for this game mastering. But it's meant to be like an organized play platform. It's called the Ledge Foundation. And so I could see that or a similar entity sort of being one of the ringleaders of all this. I know that when I got into collaborating and thinking about collaborating and looking at other open source projects, it occurred to me that there's some technical and some legal aspects to work out, but I think it is workable. And especially if you can get a lot of people to sign up for that or to agree to all collaborate under a certain set of rules, then I think it could work really well. So it would be great to see what people's comments are or what people think about that too.
Right. So, as far as open source is concerned and maybe, some of the kind of legal thoughts, where are the complexities, and what comes to mind for you?
Like, do you want to use co-ownership model? Do you want to use a licensing model? If you use licensing, do you use a standard open source license, or do you create a different open gaming license following some of the open gaming licenses in the industry? I think there's some other questions about do you set up like an open source foundation to be the owner that then licenses the work back to everyone, or something else? The model I ended up choosing for the Ledge Foundation was a co-ownership model that licenses back under standard licenses. So that way the work has a compatible license with most of the art out there, most of the code out there that people might want to use. And then people still own their own work. So, if you contributed a really great backstory that we could use for an NPC, you can still use that backstory in any game without any issue. But the derivatives of that, if somebody, some new contributor comes in and he edits it and makes another cool change to it, now that's licensed back to you under the foundation. So you would have to give a proper attribution to the person that made those changes, or to the foundation for the ownership. I think the only reason I got concerned about all that stuff in the first place is because I had some bad run-ins in the past with companies, basically taking my work or not, crediting me properly, intellectual property issues that I felt like were better to nip in the bud before I got started. If you look at the history of some of these that didn't do this, what ends up happening is there are there's the huge contributors, people that put in a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, and they end up having this disproportionate effect on how the future of the group goes or the community goes. And I think you don't want to create that situation where the community, people join the community thinking that they're going to have an equal voice, but then in actuality, there's vested members that have sort of bought their way in by just being early adopters that contributed a lot of content before they had figured out all the legal stuff.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really super common model in our modern age right now. People get together, they collaborate, they say, hey, let's build blah, blah, blah. They do it. And then when it's done, that's when they start running into problems because they haven't figured out the ownership issues in advance. And then and they really can create very serious problems. So I agree. Those are the kind of things that you want to iron out in advance. One of the things that I want to do with my project is, I mentioned that Games Masters can share materials. So the way I want to set it up is that it's a mutual collaboration society with a open license for derivative works. So let's say we're both in the same game. You're the Games Master. I'm a player. I create a character. I do this huge write-up on my character. It's like an awesome backstory, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing is great. And I know that other people would like to use this character in their game for whatever reason. But also, as I'm playing the game with you and you're games mastering, I'm writing a novel that's based on the adventures of my character in your world. And let's just say, for argument's sake, it's totally verbatim. So I'm actually taking the things that you say as games master, I'm writing those in my novel, and I'm taking the things that I say as a player, and I'm writing those in my novel. And also the player next to me and the other player over there, and so on. And I'm just creating work that's based on the game. And you're doing the same thing, except you're writing a movie script, let's say. And it's a little bit different than mine. I mean, the wording is going to be different, but it's all based on the same story. So the idea, and let's say our two compatriots, right and left, are doing similar things, but one person's creating artwork and another person is doing something on music. Under this system, I can do that, you can do your thing, they can do their things, and we're free to do it. The model is you can create any derivative works you want, nobody's going to come after you and sue you, and it's a mutual sharing and mutual collaboration setup so that we're free from the worries of, oh, I'm not allowed to use these materials. They're just free. If you're on the system, if you're a member, then you have access to whatever you want to create any derivative works you want.
Do you imagine that there's do you imagine it sort of like the person who makes the derivative work gets it as though it were public like publicly licensed, or do you imagine it more like it's a copyleft scheme where it enforces that it continues to be free and open source for anybody that uses it in the future?
Yeah, well, the way, as far as I've gotten with this idea so far, is it's part of the club. So, when you are a games master in the system, then you have access to the materials through the legal framework of the system. Outside the system, I haven't really thought that far. Like, let's say I write a book, and all the games masters in the system and all the players in the system have free access to be able to create derivative works off of materials in the system. But what happens when a third party who's not a member takes that book and says, okay, I want to create derivative works off of that? Is it public domain? Is that what, is that the right answer? Or, I'm not really sure what the right way to go about that. I have a tendency.
It's tricky.
Yeah. I mean, my tendency is to want to allow the freedom of expression. I mean, this is kind of like a sort of thing with me, but I want to stop this whole thing about I got mine and nobody else is allowed to use it and I'm going to control it.
Yeah.
It's an idea.
No, I absolutely agree with that.
So I kind of have...
I mean, that's very understandable. I think for me, part of the thinking is that being in China, for example, I feel like what would happen is unless you're very careful, then, and you have the right connections, to be honest, but unless you're very careful and more, if you don't, somebody will take your work that you've created, they will create a derivative work, and they will find a way to profit off of it in a way that will run you out of business or just kill all enthusiasm that you had for your project because there's somebody else out there making money off of what you made. So I don't want to stop people from doing that, but I at least want to create a system where we have the equal opportunity to do that back to them. Like if I created a work and like I ended up going under a copyleft scheme for mine. So that means that if I create a derivative work, then I have to release it under the same license that it was given to me. And similarly, if somebody creates a derivative work, even if they're third party outside my network, they have to release their work under the same license that it was given to them. Right. So that means that if somebody goes and they write a movie script or something and they make $1 billion off their movie, then I can take their movie script and I can make a sequel and I can try to one up them and make $2 billion, right? And I feel like that's the best way to ensure that you at least have that chance, because if you re-release it under public domain, or you release it under some other license that allows them to take a little bit and say, this is mine, then you're just back at square one where, everybody's like, this is mine. This is my little bit. Like, yes, I derive from you, but the rest is mine. Like, no, I feel like you have to be able to say, no, we're all sharing this and we all agree that if we use any part of it, we share all of it.
Right. And I think the key to success in that is simplicity. We have to set up a framework that is so simple. It's such a no-brainer. It's okay. I'm allowed.
Yeah. Well, that's why I went with the standard licenses. I didn't write my own. I was like, well, I see the Open Gaming License. Paizo wrote theirs, WotC wrote theirs, but it's I don't need to go that complicated. Let's just use one of the standard ones that is used throughout the industry, and then everybody who's familiar with it can just go with that.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge boon. I mean, just generally, I don't even mean necessarily just for gaming, for professional games master. I just mean generally. I feel like as a society, we're so stuck in litigation. And we're so, it's just hampering everything. It's putting such a huge drag on creativity. Like everybody's, got to be looking over their shoulder all the time, wondering, oh, can I say Hobbit? Am I allowed to say Hobbit? I don't know. Maybe I have to say Halfling. Wait, did Wizards of the Coast already grab Halfling? Maybe I have to call them Ookmax. I mean, come on. It's just too much. And so I feel like I want to counter that. I want a free ideas movement. I want a, hey, let's have some collaboration. Let's be freaking IP hippies and just enjoy life, get high on the concepts and enjoy it, That's my feeling. I mean, that's what I'd like to try to work towards.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like that too. I mean, I spent a few years doing like patent, like doing various stuff related to intellectual property, and it is just a mess. It's a terrible situation right now, and this is really a whole nother discussion. But like, it would be so great if we could just move beyond this as a society and find a way to, just have fun, right?
yeah, yeah. I see
Right.
David just joined us. Hi, David. Yeah, David, if you want to chime in, maybe your mic isn't live yet, or you might need to, unmute or something like that. And sometimes there are audio problems. If there are, you should just log out and come back in, and it might solve it. That happens sometimes. So anyway, you're very welcome. Glad to have you. As soon as you are ready, feel free to chime in anytime. So, and what we're talking about at the moment is the concepts around Professional Games Master Society, maybe helping to facilitate development by Games Masters, by helping Games Masters to organize with each other in collaborative frameworks. So, for example, we might have, like let's say a bi-weekly sessions for what I'm calling cat herding, which might be like Games Masters getting together and saying, hey, I've got a story thing, but it's gotten a little too convoluted. It's a little out of my hands. I need a little help. Come on, guys, help me out with this. That kind of
I know the feeling.
I think we all know that feeling. I have known from experience how incredibly helpful it is just to have a couple of people there to listen to what's going on and then help to just tie it together or give brainstorming ideas. It's a huge boon. So that kind of thing. So anyway, David, tell us about yourself. What's going on?
I've been a dungeon master for about a couple years now. Been doing so since the start of when Murder of Baldur's Gate came out, and then I just been doing it ever since. I've been doing some. I've been known to severely tweak the published campaigns because to keep people from following along with their own bought books. So I've been doing some very nasty things. I started off right off the bat by having two chosen of Baal appear in Murders of Baldur's Gate, and I hadn't even let up since. Yeah, and right now I'm doing Curse of Strahd, my take on Strahd is a little bit different, Tracy might want to knock on my door, drag me away to some loony bin for what I'm planning. Yeah.
All right. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just a discussion, I think it was on the Professional Games Master Society, but people were talking about the use of modules, and it was kind of like a thread about, hey, take the module, that's cool, and then shape it your own way, because what tends to happen is players have those modules too.
Yeah.
No, it's this huge spoiler. I mean, you can't. I mean, and I think a lot of people play modules straight, and they sort of rely on their players not to, cheat or whatever. But
Oh yeah.
it's a lot better to have your own stuff mixed in at least.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So, Lake, about your game. I mean, do you do your own unique material, or do you take from kind of the module frameworks and use those?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't run a module in years. When I do modules, it's usually with new players who I would reasonably expect have never played before or wouldn't own any such module, so I can run them straight. But for almost all the experienced players that I run with, I just roll my own system or setting. I've been going back to, once I started going semi-pro, I decided to go back to D&D and Pathfinder for the system, but to still use an original setting and story.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing.
That's a good choice. For one thing, E5 is hugely popular, and using your own materials is obviously the way to make it unique. So I think that's a good combo.
Right.
So David,
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I'm sorry. There's a tiny bit
No,
of
it's okay.
that keeps, that happens. So what I'm going to do from now on is I'm just going to pause when I'm done talking to give other people space to chime in. But let me just finish my question for David. So David, I take it you are a member of the Professional Games Master Society, or no? Or
Well, I think I joined the Google group.
Yeah.
Yeah, but probably haven't if there's like a website there, I haven't applied in there yet.
Okay. And so I take it from the fact that you've kind of signed up that you at least have the intention or interest in, hey,
Yes.
how do we go pro with this stuff?
Oh, how to go pro? I like to see it go pro. I just I have no ideas off the back of my head right now.
Right, yeah. Well, we've been compiling a lot of material on the site. If you go to the Google Plus group, you'll see that there's a list. And you know what? I have to say, I think that the new Google Plus, kind of layout has sort of screwed up my ability in a way. Because I think it kind of hides the documents set. Like in the old thing, right on the upper left-hand corner, you see all the list of the documents you can go in right away. Now I think it's kind of hidden off someplace. I'm not using the new one, so I'm not really sure. But when I saw,
I have a WordPress blog myself, which I'll use for documents and stuff.
Yeah. So there is a documentation folder though that has brainstorming documents and organizational documents, recommended I have some templates for if you were going to write a letter to your local community center and say, hey, I want to start a role-playing game program for kids. I've got a template for that. I've got some sort of kind of media templates, like just stuff to post out there. There's actually a lot of material there. So if you want to sort of start exploring, hey, where are we at currently? That's a good place to start. Is just go into our Google Plus Documents folder and start browsing around in there.
Sure thing.
Yeah. So So I'm really psyched about the concept myself. I think that going pro is. I think it's the future. Frankly, I think it's the future of entertainment because everybody is used to passive entertainment. I go to the movies and I'm watching somebody else's creativity. This is introducing a totally new concept of the entertainment is me being in the story.
Right. That's why I like these. That's why I'm so drawn into role-playing games instead of movies. Just the ones like the line said from the Max. The ones in my head, the stories in my head are somehow always better.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. If you
Well,
go.
Yes, Lake, you were going to say.
I was just curious what do you find the stories that work a lot better in this medium than stories that work in other mediums, if we're making this comparison now?
So, after you, please, David.
Go ahead.
No, after you. I'm the host, so I want to encourage you guys to talk.
Oh boy. That's. I guess. You have to excuse me. Brain's a little autistic today. I think instead of someone else, instead of you being followed around through a story and everything, you get to control everything. Like you're the director instead. If you wanted to see something that's different from what you've seen, if you want to, like for example, if you wanted to see a comic book version of of Civil War where Cap won instead of Iron Man, for example.
Spoilers. Alert.
I'm gonna have to put a huge spoiler alert video. Holy crap!
I didn't see the movie yet, just the comics.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Maybe they changed it in the movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either, so I no spoilers, please. Don't kill me here.
Well.
So yeah, I think though I'm not sure I really understood your question entirely, Lake. When you're asking what kinds of stories for this medium, are you talking? I assume you're not talking genre, but are you talking about things like I don't know how to? I'm not sure. Can I ask you to sort of rephrase the question?
Sure. Like you know, what is really enabled by the medium of tabletop play or game mastering specifically? Like you could think of it like handcrafted games that you can't do in other types of mediums, because of course having that interactivity allows you to maybe experiment with narrative structure or with characterization in different ways. I imagine that every time that you have like that another dimension of the experience, that you open up like more avenues for storytelling. And so I've been thinking about that as I've been experimenting a lot with what I've been doing. So I was just curious if you guys had been thinking about that as well.
Yeah, I have been, and you know, one of the really interesting things about role-playing games, there are two aspects that come to mind when you ask that. One is that it's entirely improvisational, and that aspect is, I think, one of the awesome things about it. It's not like you're building a story, it's that you're reacting to things, and it's all happening organically through gameplay. And so the plot lines and you know, character development, like character realizations and their growth and whatever, personality changes and whatever, are all spontaneously happening through the gameplay completely improvisationally. So that's one aspect that I think is kind of unique to role-playing games in terms of story. And the other thing, too, that comes to mind is that role-playing games can be, they're not always, but they can be long-term campaigns that last for years, which makes them a lot like soap operas in a way. And you can do a really slow, let's say, character development over a very long period of time that is natural feeling. You know, like you really see, yeah, this character has really evolved over time. But it's taken a long time, which makes sense because these things do take a long time. Whereas when you watch this kind of thing, and let's say a TV show, and it's one season, and you're like, okay, I buy it, I see it, but it doesn't have the same real feeling that you can get out of role-playing games.
Right.
What else comes to mind for you, Lake?
Well, I enjoy long-form campaigns like the ones you described, and I do really enjoy being able to tell those stories that require a bit more, like as you were talking about before, volume or detail. And one of the things that I think is really interesting to handle, for example, are mystery stories, just as a genre, but also as a narrative sort of structure, because you can start to move around issues that you have in other types of mediums, even other types of games. Things like conservation of detail, where people are trying to focus on, you know, if you give them a clue or a hint, they take it as being a clue or a hint. But if once you start to give them enough details or enough additional aspects of the narrative, you can actually kind of overwhelm that sense and get them to start feeling like they're in a more natural world, and they have to actually pay attention to whether or not something is or is not a clue. Or I think for me personally, I really enjoy the improvisational aspect as well, the way that you can construct scenes or build whole scenarios where you don't know the beginning or the ending. You don't even know when or how you're going to use this in the campaign, but you can piece it together as you go along, and that's okay, and it actually works out really well if you have a lot of practice and you've set it up properly. And I enjoy the mix of being able to do things on the fly and have more narrative control as a player. So as a game master, I really enjoy creating those opportunities for players and just allowing, for example, the freedom of expression that you just don't get in games where you're not talking to a real person. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There is so much to it that is fascinating to me in terms of how role-playing games represents a kind of new art form. And as I think as we go forward with the concept of professional games mastering as a sort of means by which to increase the level of quality of our games, we're going to really find that there's so much to it in terms of the nuances and the differences between how you games master a game is very different than how you construct a novel, for example, or write a film script. Because you're dealing with these factors of, I don't know what the players are going to do. This is all I have pieces in my game storyboard, let's say. I don't know when they're going to come in or not come in, and am I going to build this whole thing and it's never going to be seen because they're going to go left instead of right? We don't know any of that.
Right.
And so it makes, there are a certain set of challenges with games mastering that make it simultaneously really challenging, but also truly fascinating and really, really fun in terms of what finally does get produced out of these games. It's, oftentimes I marvel at my players' wit and humor and I look at the campaign, I'm like, wow, that was really colossal what wound up happening, which I didn't necessarily expect at the beginning of the game. So, I think it's awesome. I think we're heading into, as we develop more tools and as we organize and as we promote the concept of professional games mastering, I think that we're really looking at an awesome future in terms of entertainment.
Yeah, and even beyond entertainment, I think there's some really cool things with game mastering, particularly that you can look at. Like, we have this opportunity for the first time to identify, the escapism that people have, what they're trying to escape from, and to slowly develop not only their character but them as a person to, come to confront the thing they're escaping from. This. I think that, like, some of the groups that I've been involved in have been kind of like self-help groups, right, where there's people that are just trying to help each other through a life crisis or through some other issue, and games can be really therapeutic that way. And you can see how, games can serve these other purposes, like games in education or games as therapy or things that are beyond just games as fun.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, my stepfather's a psychoanalyst, and I was talking with him about the potential of psychoanalysts using role-playing games. And so he listened to my little spiel, and all of a sudden, you could just see the lights going off in his head. He's like, wait, no, that's something that could be really useful. So, yeah, I think that there is something definitely to be said for that. And sometimes as a games master, I also feel like, in a way, I'm helping my players either A, to think like an adventurer in life, like, hey, how do I build skills so that I could be an effective human being in this world, and stuff like that. I know it had that effect on me when I played Traveler way back in, the 70s or whatever, and I was like, wait, you mean you go to school in order to acquire skill sets so that you can go off and do amazing stuff? Oh yeah, that's what school's for. It didn't occur to me until I played Traveler that that's what it's for. So, that kind of thing I think really also comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to log off for a while. I just want to stop over there, say hi.
All right.
I'll be back later.
Okay, great, David. Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
All right, take care. So, anyway, I did want to mention, we are past 8 o'clock. I did say this would go from 7 to 8. If you want to drop off, that's cool. If you want to hang out, I can hang out until 8:30. That's cool too.
Okay. I don't mind hanging out till 8:30. I'm curious if there'll be anybody else that joins.
Yeah, I just was checking to see if people chimed in online. I see Aaron, chimed in. He said he logged in for a second or two. And let's see, got the new links.
Because he was on the the wrong hangout. It looks like.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's part of what happened. It's my fault. I totally accept responsibility here. I did screw this up, and I screwed it up in the worst way. I did it at the last minute. But I really wanted to be able to have this recorded. And I thought,
right,
that's actually really important because, sure, we could get 5 people in today, but if it's not recorded and it disappears, then nobody will get to see this conversation later. And I think that's going to be the real value of this, I hope. Anyway,
right.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah, well, having more people to talk will also be extremely valuable in a later conversation. So.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, and I see that a number of people not finding the join button. Sorry about that. I see JD McDonald tried to log in, couldn't find it. So, okay, I promise. Now I do know how to set this up correctly. Next time, I absolutely promise I will set it up correctly the first time. It will be cool. Everybody will be able to join without any problem, and I apologize. I'm really sorry. I did screw this up. It's my fault. But at the same time, I think this was an awesome conversation, and at least we actually had an awesome conversation. So, it wasn't a complete fail. So anyway, but to kind of get back to some of the things that we were talking about.
Well, I was going to mention before the end of the call, before I forget, that the most useful thing that I learned as I was going through this process was that it's okay to just ask for permission. I was kind of deadlocked or roadblocked up until the point when I started just asking different individuals if I could use their stuff or if I could play on their platform or whatever else. Like I just asked the Roll20 team if they'd be okay with me running my service on their platform, and they were. Okay. And I asked Jeff Herbert, the designer of Hero Machine, if he'd be okay if I just used Hero Machine to make my portraits, and he said, yeah, that'd be great. And other people as well, like I thank Gabriel Picard for his art. That's been pretty instrumental in setting up the campaign. And, a lot of, I guess there's just so many people that, like Lone Black was the game master who was a professional that first got me started, helping me to understand kind of who else was out there and what was going on. So, it's been a journey. So I'm sure other people have stories, but I just thought I would share some of the key pieces that helped me to succeed and get started.
Right. Yeah, I mean, those are very good thoughts. It does bring to mind a thought in terms of kind of future framework. Right now, we're such a nascent concept. I mean, people practically don't even believe that it exists. But it does, and there are a few members actually of Professional GM Society who are actively making money games mastering right now. But it's a really unknown concept. But I think as it gets more prevalent, like let's say we wind up with 100 games masters on Roll20 who are making money off of Roll20. Roll20's attitude might change.
It might.
Yeah, and they may say, hey, you're making money, we should be getting a piece of the action, blah, blah, blah. Or their lawyers might come in and say, hey, what's going on with this, blah, blah, blah. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're practically required to pay for pro membership in Roll20 anyway, just to be able to do it realistically. But yeah, I get your point. I mean, that's why I asked for permission from Fantasy Grounds, got it from them too. I was prepared to make the jump if conditions changed or something was going on. So
yeah, well, I guess the question in my mind is when you ask for permission, I assume, maybe I'm wrong, that you mentioned you're planning to do a pro games mastering thing on their platform.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, all right, that's cool.
And they were very forthright with explaining their terms or their situation. For example, I shouldn't be using copyrighted art. I should be keeping everything above board on that, and I should be if I am going to be using art that's from the web through their from the web interface that they have built into their platform, then I shouldn't be streaming, for example. And I had considered streaming for a time, but yeah, I would need a lot more resources, I think, before I could be using the exclusive art in Roll20 or art that was openly licensed and free to use. I just discovered that there's a game out there that has released all their art open source, including concept art, that it would be really helpful if I had known that at the beginning. This is the game Rhizome. And so there's resources like that that I'm slowly discovering as I'm building this all up that might allow me to find other avenues for revenue or other things. You know, if I was streaming and I could build up a streaming audience, that might help. Or if I could just run more games, that might help. I mean, there's a lot to discuss actually about how do you survive as a professional game master doing what you're doing, because you know, I'm not like in the black yet, for example. So
right, yeah, and cutting costs is going to be a big part of it. Having a sort of low financial impact, you know, lifestyle is going to be part of it. I do think that streaming is actually going to turn out to be super important, because not necessarily, I don't see it as necessarily from ad revenue, but I think there are going to be some superstar games masters, like superstar musicians, who have huge audiences who pay to watch these games live. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really big deal, but that's going to take a lot of time, and the technology is going to have to be a lot better. And, you know, I think it's going to have to sort of cajole itself into place. But I think that's eventually where this is all actually heading, is
maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe. But I think that's where the money is.
Yeah, that might be where the money is. But I mean, it's like saying that esports is where the money is with a lot of these competitive games, right? Where you can see how once the game becomes a spectacle, that changes a lot of the gameplay. It changes how, you know, iterations of the game are designed, and like it really changes the whole direction for things. And I'm not sure I would want, for example, my game mastering to go that way. Don't think I'm particularly flashy. I don't have like the presence for the spectacle to really get players into the game, but I still think I'm a really good game master, and my players enjoy it. So it could be that this is like a whole third new beast, right? This is just something else that may be the direction that game mastering is going, and it may be successful, but you probably are going to make more money from building the platform than you are from showing it off, I imagine. If you are setting up like you know, similar to, you know, a game like League of Legends can be both free to play and can make more money off of the in-app purchases than traditional like pay to play games do. And they have the esport on top of that, but the esport isn't the primary source of revenue. It's not what keeps the game going from the purely financial point of view, but it is what keeps the excitement in the game. It is what drives the community. It's like a huge part of the game, obviously. And that's true for all the esports that I know. So it could be true of this. I mean, I know that I have players all the time that approach me and are like, hey, are you like Matt Mercer and his friends? You know, can you run a game like that? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I'm not a voice actor, but I could do something. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of variation in terms of how games masters approach this. But one of the things that is going to be a real challenge is figuring out, and it's going to be an individualistic thing, although there's only going to be a limited set of ways of doing this, but how to monetize on games mastering. So you might have some games masters are monetizing by providing support services to other games masters. Let's say they're just really good at scenario building or character development, and they're just great at it. So everybody loves their stuff, but they're actually, hey, you know, when it comes to games mastering, they're kind of nebbishy and whatever. That might be their skill set. Others are incredible in improv. Awesome, you know, their character portrayals are fantastic, but they're not really good at scenario development. You know, so it's just not their, you know, it's not their thing. Their thing is improv. They're really good, you know, etc. So based on different skill sets, it may be that, well, this guy can monetize this way, and this guy can monetize this way, and this girl can monetize that way. And there's like a mix. And it's like, I think though that from my point of view, and of course, I'll be first to admit I could be wrong about this, but I think that where the big money is in mass entertainment. Anytime you have a large number of people as a viewer set, then you have the potential for big amounts of money to be rolling around. If the Games Master can sit and stream and collect that money, and obviously you would do that because it's your game, your thing, then I think that's where. So ideally, ideally what it is there's a show, and it's like a soap opera, but it's a role-playing game, and there's dice being rolled, and that it's a game, but it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like a story. You're watching the characters from the audience point of view. It's just this fun story where nobody ever knows what's going to happen because there's chance involved. There's not a script writer back there. There's the game. I see that as being potentially huge in terms of audience participation if the Games Master is really great, the world is really fascinating, the players are actually really fun to watch, and you can catch some, real character development and so on, and the stories are interesting. There, I think if some people hit that sweet spot, there's all the potential in the world for those people, those Games Masters, to make it in that venue. Of course, it has
I think when I imagine this, like I'm imagining your scenario that you described, I'm like, you have almost like semi-pro players at that point, people who are known to be good, fun to watch.
Absolutely.
You've got the diehard fans that are watching on Twitch or watching whatever streaming service that you've got. They want to see every roll, so you've got like a little camera set up for them so that they can see it's all fair and there's nothing untoward. But then, for the slightly more casual community, you probably have to edit the videos a lot, get them down to a shorter length. Very few people are going to watch a show that's 3 hours long. So you want to pull it down to a reasonable length, maybe just cut to the cool action-y spots or, the most exciting bits of it, and sort of showcase a highlight reel of the best of the play at the table that day. And
that's
with good production values and everything, it could work.
Yeah, though for me, the way I would like to set this out, I call it improvisational game theater. And what I would like to do is not run a 3-hour game, but run, like, let's say, a series of 1-hour games with the professional players and the professional Games Master. So everything is, really pretty top quality. But the way that it's set up is more like a play than it is like a game. So the audience is, the key here would be to absolutely minimize rules, metagaming conversation. Everybody stays in character the whole game. If there's a pause because something needs to be looked up, you have an assistant sitting next to the Games Master who can whisper in the Games Master's ear. And if there's a pause, the actors know, okay, there's a pause. Let's have non-immediate action conversation. They're improv actors. These guys are improv. They're pros. They know how to cover for you, and they know how to cover for each other. And so it becomes this totally improvisational, completely entertaining game that you're watching that's professionally run, that's super sweet to watch. And I think that's the vision that I have for this improvisational game theater concept, where I think if we can pull it off and make those stories interesting to a general audience, then I think we're talking potential for a hit. This is really a cool form of entertainment. Another potential idea is much more difficult to achieve, but I think it's also in the works, which is virtual worlds that are run by live Games Masters.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the virtual worlds with live Game Masters, that's more similar to the dream I had of bringing in like general AI or artificial general intelligence that can
be totally
actually
required. Yeah. You couldn't survive in
they
that.
can totally power that whole system.
It would be necessary. It'd be a necessary piece of the pie. You have to be able to, as a Games Master, have 100 different groups of 10 people and be able to send the monsters this way, and they act intelligently. And you say, oh, now you need to zoom into the dragon and get into the dragon's head, and now you're playing the dragon, where did you come from, blah, blah, blah. You're doing all that. And then you hop back out and you're over at the other group and you're playing the witch and so on. You have to have that ability to maneuver around and play larger crowds of people in order to make money. Because, or, you know, another model is you have small crowds, but they're really rich and you charge a huge amount and it's a very customized thing. And, you know, it's expensive. Yeah. It's awesome. And people love that too. That's also possible.
Yeah. That's possible, yeah. An anecdote I had about this was back when I was doing mobile game development, I was really sold on the idea of going mass market and trying to reach as many people as we could. But we had a lot of middling games, you know, things that weren't hugely successful. And we were getting analytics about how much players played the games. And I decided to compare engagement minutes or engagement hours between the game mastering that I was doing and the mobile games that I was making. I wasn't doing both at the same time exactly. I was taking a little bit of a break from game mastering, but the looking into it, you know, we had and the average game had like 30,000 downloads in, you know, X number of months, which was longer than, you know, the primary sales of the game would occur. So we weren't going to be making a lot more sales than that. And, you know, the average player played for like 2 minutes. So, you know, that's like 60,000 minutes of engagement time, you know, maybe like 10,000 or like 1,000 hours, engagement hours is another way to think about it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if you compare that to, you know, the game mastering that you do, if you think about it, how many engagement hours that you actually deliver to players, you know, your average game master could, over the course of a year, deliver that many hours. You know, if they have a lot of players and they're playing every week, or even just over a few years, playing less often. And that's really incredible to think about, that when we talk about scale, you know, we're not even talking about that large of a scale here. Like just being able to increase the output of a game master a few times is like being able to do, you know, get into the middle of the rankings on the App Store or something, like the top 50. You know, and that's pretty incredible, actually, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think it's totally possible. It's something that you could do, and if you can find a way to monetize that to the same degree that people are monetizing things in the App Store or other forms of mass market media, then that you could totally see where a viable like monetization model comes from out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But, so I think that would be a good topic for another hangout. Would be, you know, let's discuss monetization options and start trying to figure out how to organize that. You know, at least I'd like to, you know, create a document. And actually, we do have a document where we discuss it. Maybe we could go over it and talk about it, you know, kind of like share the knowledge. So the other thing I wanted to ask before, you know, it's almost 8:30, is you mentioned that you had kind of discovered some cool resources along the way. And, you know, I'm asking if you wouldn't mind posting that to the Professional Games Master Society and, you know, just sort of share the wealth. And, you know, the idea of the society is we kind of collaborate to help each other. So, you know, that's the concept. And that would be good because it sounds like you've tapped into some pretty good resources.
Well, maybe. I mean, some of them I just discovered, so I haven't gotten deep into it, but others I have been using pretty regularly, and it's been useful.
Right. Well, and the other...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the other kind of point that stems out of that is maybe where the resources are weak, either other members know resources that are viable, or maybe it's an opportunity for us to organize ourselves and create, you know, resource pools that make life easier for us as professional games masters.
Right.
So
yeah, it could be really useful too.
Yeah, exactly. The place to start is, what are our needs? What do we need to, you know, what do we need right now to get things, you know, into, you know, a shape and condition that makes us successful. So I think that's step one, and then figure out either where are the resources out there that we collaboratively know about and can point people to, or what can we develop? I know we have a lot of developers in the group, and I'm sure that there's WordPress experts. There, I do ASP.NET and SQL Server database development, and we have a bunch of people who do video, audio, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we have a lot of members. We have like over 150 members right now. So there's.
Oh, really?
I think at this point it's just a question of, okay, what do we need to organize, and let's start putting some plans together in terms of bringing stuff together at this point, because we have a number of us who are actually out there right now, and I'm going to be working on getting gigs going in my venue here in the short run at this point. So I think we could all use the help.
Sure.
All right. So it's 8:30. I want to thank you, Lake, for coming in. This was awesome. And
Yeah, no problem.
okay. And okay. Well, I'm gonna just post this. I'll post it online, and then I'll set up another hangout with I think the next topic. And maybe you have some ideas, but I was saying next topic could be monetization, concepts or something along those lines, or maybe monetization and legal, legal conversation. How do we deal with this, from both perspectives?
Yeah, that'd be nice. And well, thanks for having me, and hope you have a good night.
All right.
Good luck to everybody out there that's watching this.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, thanks everybody. And if you have ideas and you want to contribute your ideas, please come to the Professional Games Master Society on Google+. That's where we're located, and we'll be seeing you there. All right, cool. Bye.